Good afternoon, and welcome to today's session, Make the Switch from Tactician to Trusted Strategic Advisor. My name is Leah Jones from the Auto Care Association and a PCMA Capital Chapter volunteer. And before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping notes with you. Today, we are using the Event EQ Hive platform. We wanted to provide a few tips on how to make the most of your experience today. Join the session chat to share your thoughts on the content and connect with your colleagues about the session you're currently attending. We also encourage you to visit the exhibitors link in the lobby to learn more about our partners who help put this event together. Spend some time visiting our sponsor pages in the exhibitor section to see how their support can enhance your experience. If you have technical questions, feel free to type your questions in the chat box or email capital@pcma.org for prompt assistance. If you have questions for the speaker, please use the Q&A function to type in your question. Look at the Publish tab in the Q&A section to upvote questions that have already been asked. Feel free to enter your questions throughout the session. On-demand sessions are available after the conference 24/7 for your viewing pleasure for 90 days following the conference. So you will be able to access this session and the other breakouts if you do miss anything. At the end of the presentation, there will be a special video performance sponsored by Visit Detroit, so stick around for a few minutes before heading back to the lobby for your next breakout session. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Chris Chambers. Chris Chambers is not your average CEO sitting behind a desk barking orders. He's, how shall we say, a little more active than that. As CEO of MGM Creative, Chris is in the field, totally involved in every detail of production. He takes full responsibility for everything the agency touches because he loves the entire creative and production process. Chris has over 30 years experience in the corporate meetings and events industry. Prior to MGM, Chris spent many years with MC Squared and Exhibit Group Giltspur, designing and building trade show exhibits. Chris develops and presents unique experiences on specific industry topics at universities, client forums, and industry events regularly. Please join me in welcoming Chris Chambers. Hi, Chris.
Thanks, Leah. Appreciate it.
Sure thing.
All right. I know we're tight on time. I think, do we still want to end on time? I'm guessing we do. Keep things rolling. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining virtually. All right. So just to dive right into this, I hope everybody's in the right room. But I always find that people don't always read the session description or may not know exactly what it's going to be about. Maybe just by the title, it's interesting. I'm going to take a minute and read to you what we're going to talk about today, what was in the description, just so everybody knows. We've titled this Elevating Your Value. And this idea of tactician, a tactician can get things done. A strategist can envision the future. Changing the perception of you and your team from just a tactician to a strategic partner within your organization can be challenging. This presentation explores several paths to achieve this elevated status and begin to adjust you and your team's value in the meetings and event space. Okay, there you have it. That's the only reading I'm going to do. So now that everybody knows why they're here, it sounds complicated, but I'm going to take you through some really simple, some obvious, and some more subtle ways to do this. But first, who are we? Who am I? And why are we experts in this area? I've been in the meetings and convention industry for 30 years. We've, as a business, have been doing this for 35 years. So you all, as planners in the event business, are our clients. And so we've been in every organization and see the issues you go through. And we've experienced it from a distance, in some cases, and close up. And so we've been able to take a lot away, and I could almost write a book on the things that you all have to deal with. So we're there with you. Okay. So we're going to dive right in. But first, I'm going to send you guys, let me actually go back one, and I'm going to throw out a poll for everybody. Here we go. All right. So what best describes your role? Event planner, meeting planner, manager of event or meeting planners. So in other words, you've got a whole team you're in charge of, or supplier. You guys should be able to all see that poll and submit your answers. I'll give you a minute. And I think when I close the poll, you'll all see the results. It looks like we're so far pretty even on all 4 groups in the room. All right. Okay, let's close. And I'm not sure if that shares. Well, it was about even across the board. Okay. So let's jump into that. A tactician, simple definition. A person who executes a carefully planned strategy to achieve a specific end, right? And anybody planning an event is effectively a tactician. Then when you look at what a strategy is really a plan of action and specifically designed for a big overall outcome, right? That's the strategy piece. But when you combine the two, you get a strategic advisor, a person who gives strategy-based guidance in his or her particular field of expertise. That's where you all want to ultimately get to. And I find too many times that event and meeting planners get stuck in a very tactical world, right? You're asked to deliver the registration and find the venue, and the questions are how many chairs and what's the menu going to be and who's vegan, and those are all tactical things, yet very important, but don't always get the appreciation or the value or the promotion or the raise that everybody's looking for. And now it seems a better time than any to start positioning yourselves more strategic, especially when some bigger questions are starting to come to fruition. So based on these definitions, I'd love to hear from you all whether or not you're considered strategic by your company. And you'll see the poll coming up right now. And it's really simple: yes, no, or sometimes. I'll give you a second to answer. And seeing results coming in. And it looks like a pretty good mix again. All right, so a bunch of you are considered strategic, about 50%. 40% are saying yes, 40% are saying sometimes, and only about 15% saying no. So, okay, that's a good sort of barometer in the room. So some of you are already considered strategic, so that's great. This may help you boost that level. All right. So the next question would be, why do you want to be a strategic advisor? Well, those answers are obvious. Longevity, money, appreciation, value, and purpose, right? It feels better to be at the table. It feels better to be considered somebody who's making these decisions along with your organization and not just that tactician. All right. So I love this little infographic. And it's really simple to follow if you look at this. If you all are, and about 50% of you are considered strategic, well, you're doing things that are exactly right. Those that are not considered strategic or sometimes strategic, you may want to be in the strategic end. So if you answered no to that, then do you want to be strategic? Yes, you've got to change something. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A few different things that you can change. Like I said, some subtle, some big, that are going to push you into more of that strategic realm. Okay. So there's some simple steps to get there that we're going to review, because everything I give you today, I want it to be tangible. I want you to be able to do it. A lot of this stuff can get philosophical. These are steps that are specifically designed, specific items that you can do. And I'm going to give you some examples as we go. And please, if you guys want, throw some stuff in the chat or Q&A as we go if you have questions. And Leah, and I think it's Amanda, somebody else is helping us as well. We'll chime in if you guys want me to pause and answer some questions, because I'd love to keep this a little interactive as we go. Okay, so these steps here, pretty simple, right? Act strategic, be brave, stand out, get ahead of the curve. Let's dive into each of those. Okay. So let's start with the first one, act strategic. It sounds simple, but what does that really mean? Well, the first way to act strategic is to really ask more questions, and not the questions you're typically used to. The smart questions, I call them smart questions. Maybe, why are we even doing this meeting? Why are we having this conference? What are we trying to achieve? Right? Those seem somewhat obvious, somewhat terrifying to ask as a person who makes their living on planning conferences, right? But it's important to ask those because it puts you as a driver in your organization. When you even question the essence of what you're doing, it gives those above you the ability to look at you and say, wait, this person is looking beyond themselves and considering the value to the overall organization. So I put here, be at the table. You want to be at the table for the decision-making process. You don't want to be the person that says, okay, when you figure it all out, just give me a call. That to me is fine for a tactician. There's nothing wrong with that. And there are plenty of people that love that role. But if you want to be more strategic and be in that realm, you've got to be at the table. You've got to be the person who's there in the beginning deciding if we're even going to have this conference and maybe why, or do we need to have a conference? Maybe there isn't one now, right? Provide unsolicited suggestions. Again, don't wait to be asked a question, offer advice, and then recommend doing it differently. That is probably the most challenging, because at the end of the day, we all know if we start with a baseline, if we start with last year's show, last year's meeting, and we look at this year's, it's going to be easier for us the more that's the same. But that's not always strategic. So I would offer that sort of difficult decision to make recommendations that are completely different, even if they take you out of your comfort zone. And you'll see that's an important element in this next piece here, where I've called it be brave, because you have to get out of your comfort zone to be strategic. Because a tactician, you know what the answer is going to be. You know you're going to execute and you're going to deliver. But for a strategist, you're making a plan. You're taking a risk. And so that is where you need to be brave. So I would offer these 4 points here. Challenge the status quo. Bring in uncomfortable ideas, right? So like I said, something that you might not even know will work, but it feels right. Offer it as a suggestion. Don't do it the same as you've always done it necessarily. In fact, I'd even say maybe do it completely opposite, or try something completely different for a reason. Make sure you have a reason to back it up. Be the initiator. Again, that's the idea of getting a seat at the table. And then bring a point of view. Don't be the person in the room or in the meeting that when they go around the room, what do you think? What do you think? Have a very specific point of view, but also have a good reason why. Because to me, that's one of the biggest questions to ask here is why. So when you bring your point of view, why, the answer shouldn't be, well, just because. Give it a reason. Even if you don't know the reason, come up with a reason. Come up with a reason why you believe that. Even if it's, hey, we don't have the time, everybody's stressed in the organization, it's not the time to do something different. That's a reason. That's a point of view. So every strategist, everybody who's strategic has a point of view. Okay, we're going to pause here and we'll do another poll and also see if we have any questions yet. I'm going to start this poll, and now I think, let's see, Jessica told me how to share it here. Clicking on polls, then click on closed versus open. Oh, okay. Huh. Okay, here's another poll. So how much of your time is spent executing meetings and events, right? And that's the executing, not planning, not the thinking behind whether we're going to do the event, but actually the physical doing. Okay. All right. So most of you are in the 75% range. And let's see, I'm going to close that poll. All right, you guys should be able to see some of these results. No, they're not coming up. That's weird. Okay, well, we'll keep going here. I can tell you guys right now that most of you are at the 75% range. All right. And let's keep going. So hopefully this is helpful. Anybody have questions as we go, just ping them. All right. So next piece is to stand out. And if you're one of many on a team, this might be a little bit more difficult. And when I mean stand out, yes, as an individual, it's important to stand out. But in this case, it's even more important to have your role in the organization and your team's role in the organization stand out. I find this to be one of the biggest problems in most companies is that when you get into the conference and meeting and event planning areas, they're seen as more tactical. And so the names of these groups are even tactical, which is kind of funny, right? You think about the name of your group or the title, that could even mean something. And so, and I'll show you a few examples here, but create a name for yourself. Make it more strategic. Tell the story of how you all have a process. You all have a way to get from A to Z, and it's not just whatever you throw at us, company, we'll execute and do, right? That's great. It feels like you have a purpose there, but at the end of the day, that's not going to ladder up to being strategic. So you want to create a process for yourselves. If you have a process, you're seen as more organized and more of a planning entity. I'll give you an example here. You'll see in a second when the slide pops up. Some of the groups in this area are called event services or the meeting planning team or meeting services, for example, or even event logistics group, right? But I would consider on the right side, these a little bit more interesting. They lend themselves a little bit more to being a strategic advisor within your organization. Strategic meeting groups or corporate assembly team, live communications, engagement team, right? These tend to have a little bit more spark, if you will, to them. So it could be as simple as that. How are you seen in your organization? And changing that perception, if you're in that position to be able to do that, it's an incredible opportunity to position you and your team for more success. Absolutely. So, all right. And another point is getting ahead of the curve. And this, again, you'll see how all this sort of ladders up together, but getting ahead of the curve is really pretty critical. If you can anticipate before somebody asks you, you've all been there when the VP of sales or the CEO comes down and says, we've got to do something different this year with our convention or our sales conference. And it's not until then that you go, oh boy, we got to do it differently. What if you initiated that? What if you got ahead of that? What if you could see the signs pointing towards let's do something different? Well, now it's more obvious than ever. And I don't know if this caught everybody off guard or not. I've got a number of clients that had started to venture into the virtual world quite some time ago because everybody saw that as a potential need, not as a replacement for the in-person, but something that was going to add to or augment those in-person meetings. And so we have a lot of clients that got ahead of the curve. And so when this happened, it was very easy to pivot and shift. So get ahead of the curve, look ahead, bring your leadership ahead and say, I know this is working for us now, but what if this changes? What should we be doing differently? And that's what we mean by getting ahead of the curve. Be the guide, be the one in your organization that people go to see what's coming up. And that might mean for you all to do a little research at night, participate in more programs like this at PCMA and IMEX and MPI and all these other great organizations that are within this community of event and meeting planners, because that group together are going to provide you the information you need to be and stay ahead of the curve. So spend some of your time every week or every month, even if it's just a little bit, an hour, looking at what might lead you to offer something to your leadership, so that you are seen as the guide. Okay, so I promised some specific tips in the form of new ideas, and I've got 10 of them here, and they are specific, and we could probably brainstorm dozens and dozens more, but I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a sort of grounded teaser into how you can do some of your daily things with a more strategic hat on. And so I've just picked 10 areas that you all are probably dealing with. So 1, just general event creative. Be single-minded. Find a red thread that can tie everything together. What does that mean? So when you look at your event, there are so many pieces to a conference, but if the conference had some sort of almost invisible red thread that tied it all together, your attendees would feel more connected, right? That's a strategic view. I put a picture of here of a conference that I saw that the entire thing was designed like ESPN Sports Center, like you were an attendee at a big ESPN Sports Center show. And so the entire event, no matter what it was, plugged into that format, and everybody immediately felt they understood how the content was being distributed, right? That's a big picture. That's being single-minded. That's a red thread to tie these things together. So that's a very strategic way to think about event creative, as opposed to giving everybody what they want. Find what's the umbrella that everything could live under. Everything that your event has can live under. What is that? It's not even a theme. It's more structural than that. But that's super strategic if you can come up with something like that. Real simple in the way of keynote speakers, and I don't mean to offend any speaker bureau people in the room. I don't mean don't use speaker bureaus. What we mean here is don't necessarily call a speaker bureau right away and just look for who's the most innovative or who's the most inspirational speaker, right? So how do you be strategic when picking a keynote speaker? One of the ways is to look at tangential industries. In other words, who else is going through what your company is going through that might have some stories or advice to tell? And these people are probably not on the speaker circuit. But I will tell you, out of doing this for 30 years, those speakers that you bring in, those keynotes that are not traditional, tend to be much more impactful and the biggest hit, because you're strategically tying it. They're building a talk or a presentation specifically for the group in the room, and not something that is fairly generic and everybody can find on YouTube, for example. I put up a shot of Legos because I had a client that was going through a very tumultuous time, and doing the research found that Lego went through a very tumultuous time and they almost went bankrupt. And so I found somebody within the organization who was there at the time and could talk about the story and tell the story. And I'll tell you, out of all the highly paid keynote speakers we had at the conference, this one was the most popular and hit home. And I think it cost them a first class flight, because it was somebody who was in the organization, who was just a working professional, wanted to share the story. And it was super impactful to the group in the room. So again, think strategic about those keynotes. Don't just go right on and go motivational speaker, who's the best, right? Because you will get something generic. Tactician wise, that works fine. That gets the speaker booked. You send one check, you call the speaker bureau, they send you a list, you're good to go. You got everything there. It's not hard, it's tactical, but strategic, you got to go a little deeper. Okay. All right. So number 3, give it a why, give it a reason for entertainment. I'm sure many of you have always struggled with trying to find what's a great entertainment to put up there. We often find that when you can tie the entertainment strategically to the content, you get a little bit more oomph. And it doesn't mean it costs more. Actually, it might even cost less. Here are two samples here. We had a conference that was all about innovation. Well, we could put any cover band up there for the music in the evening at the cocktail reception, and that would be fine. It works. It's great. It's cheap. It's done. But instead, we got Bill Close, who was on America's Got Talent. He is an inventor of instruments. He invented the largest harp in the world called the Earth Harp. He's got about 15 other instruments, and he played great music. So it checked the box. It was the entertainment. But he also was an inventor, and he was all about innovation. And he was able to talk between his sets on how he invented and why he invented it and what inspired him. And honestly, it was the same price as a cover band. So really neat way to tie it in. There's another one here. We wanted to really tell the story. We're doing a conference on mobility. We brought in a troupe called Palabolos. I'm sure you've heard of them. They're super entertaining. They do shadow dancing. We built a custom shadow dance with them that literally told the story of an employee that was having to be moved as an expat out of their home country and work abroad, and what that emotional sort of story is. And so it was super entertaining, but it was directly tied to the content of the conference. Okay. Number 4 is venue. Again, reject the traditional if you can. Don't just look for what's convenient, but maybe something that's new or interesting or connects to the content in some way. Here are 2 thoughts. Look, we brought in an incredible basketball player for a keynote speech. And we thought, well, why are we bringing a basketball player into a ballroom for a keynote? I mean, this is a basketball player. Let's do it on a basketball court. So the venue, the hotel we were at, had a basketball court. So we brought everybody out to the basketball court, and that's where the keynote happened. And he actually picked up a few balls and played around and used those analogies. And it just made more sense. And it didn't cost anything more to bring everybody outside. In fact, it was great. And then universities are really interesting places. Even though we housed everybody at the hotels, we did entertainment, we did breakouts, but for the general sessions, we brought people into one of the main lecture halls at Oxford. And it just felt different, right? And for what we were talking about with that group, it felt more important and more cerebral. And so again, a strategic way to select a venue. Okay. Number 5, and we're cranking here. All right, the least typical content. When you're designing content strategically, you want to look at maybe your least typical presenters. And when I say that, I mean maybe it's not the CMO that communicates the marketing program, but maybe it's somebody within the marketing department that communicates the marketing plan. It might be more interesting to the attendees. Maybe it's putting the attendee peers up on stage. Again, these take guts to offer up to your leadership, but hey, why does the CMO always do that? Why not have somebody else do that portion this time? Mix it up a bit. That's super strategic. Transform passive into active. Get the audience up off their feet, out of the room, get them to physically participate in the content. You see on the right there, that's looks like dirt and worms and dirt. That is a chocolate pudding of sorts that was created by an incredible chef we brought up on stage to talk about innovation, but in the world of cooking. This company was not a cooking company. This company was not a food company, but looking tangentially again at the content. And this was a way to bring in some content and a unique keynote speaker that was different. Okay. All right. Agenda, same thing. Use patterns. Patterns are great. You don't have to be completely mixed up to build a strategic agenda, but there are other ways to achieve this. And so one of the ways to achieve a strategic agenda is to include the audience. Let them pick to where they go. Like today, you could pick what breakout you were going to ad hoc. You didn't have to sign up in advance. Again, it's very popular, but again, it could be very strategic if you allow the audience to decide maybe what the breakouts are. And I've got some more on that in a second. Networking, number 7, you'll see coming up here in a second. Why do we network? Yeah, sometimes it works to just throw some drinks in an open bar and call that a networking session, and that works fine. But at the end of the day, what is networking? Networking is about people wanting something. You need to get something that's going to help further your efforts in your career. That's really what networking is. It's not really entertainment. It's not about just hanging out bullshitting. Networking is, what can I get? And so maybe you can facilitate the getting. And again, that's strategic. You have to define when somebody says, well, let's do some networking, right? You get that request. Let's dig in a little deeper and say, well, what do you mean by networking? What do you want people to achieve here? And so if you help facilitate exactly what that is, it's going to be seen as more strategic as opposed to just an open bar. Sponsorships, number 8. That's interesting because nowadays, you're giving them a booth at your conference, you're giving people a banner, right? You've got all the traditional means, but at the end of the day, if you could provide true value to those sponsors and give them some guarantees, that becomes really strategic. And I'll just give you a little example. And I think there are a number of conferences that do this quite successfully now, where if a sponsor is paying to be part of their program, you're going to guarantee them something that they want. What do they want? They want to get in front of your salespeople. They want to get in front of your buyers. So what if you said, to be a sponsor at our program, you're going to get this. To be an attendee of our program, right? We're going to set up those appointments. I think IMEX does that quite well, right? If you're sponsored, you're required to go to a certain amount of people, certain amount of groups, et cetera. So again, provide those guarantees, give them some value, give those sponsors value. And if you use that word value and start to think what's valuable, but what makes it really strategic is if you ask those sponsors, what's valuable to you? And if you can start to ask those questions, you're going to get answers that are going to allow you to deliver something more strategic with your conference. All right. 2 more. And we're a little over on time, but we started pretty late, so I'm hoping we're okay. Audience acquisition. That's number 9. Again, that's a lot of you are struggling with that. I know, to get people to your conferences. You may not be responsible for that, but if you are, I'll give you 2 words of advice. 1, make it provocative, and making it provocative can mean a lot of things. But promotion of an event, keep some surprises. Maybe you don't announce who your big keynotes are or your entertainment, but leak it out as to some hints. Create some things that allow people to go, I want to know more, right? Don't tell them everything. If you think about years ago, when Amtrak created the Acela, they came out with an incredible ad campaign. In the first 6 months of the ad campaign, you had no idea what it was. There were these little shots of people drinking wine and relaxed and gourmet this and you thought, what is this? What is this for? And then all of a sudden people were in one place and another place, and you didn't know what it was until 2 weeks before they launched the first train. All of a sudden, boom, it was, whoa, that's Amtrak. That's pretty cool. Again, creating that provocative element, and then bring your audience inside. Maybe create a steering committee. Maybe go out and get some of your top attendees. Find some attendees that have been to your conference for the last 5 years. And you say, we're going to make a steering committee and we want you to be on it. And maybe you take a dozen or 20 of these attendees and bring them inside and allow them to help you plan the conference, right? You're going to get a huge amount of leaps forward on that if you bring them inside. And again, consider strategic. And then number 10, engagement. Skin in the game. You got to give your audience some skin in the game. You've got to allow them to help drive some of this. Before I created this breakout today, I talked to the team at PCMA and I said, well, what do they want to hear? What is interesting to people? What would be important? And we looked at some surveys, and that's why we built this. So you could even do that live. Offer that to your presenters. Say to your presenters, maybe you start and say, what does everybody want to know? Why is everybody here? So bring them in, give that audience some skin in the game as far as letting them be part of sculpting the content or that information right up front. Okay. We've got a little bit of time left. Leah just texted me here, said we're going to end at 3:15. Do we have any questions? I don't see any questions coming in. Let's look at, is there anything in chat anybody's curious about? You can ask about anything, really. Now's a great time to shift to strategic, especially with virtual. You will be seen as super strategic if you're the one in your organization that says, hey, this isn't coming back as quickly as we thought. And when it does, we're still going to need to offer a hybrid version. We're still going to need to offer our attendees a way to participate, maybe without being there the whole time. And again, this is a great time to be strategic. I don't see anything coming through in chat here. So hopefully this was helpful to everybody. I'm going to give you guys a quick little review here. So just in summary, we have steps to get there, right? Act strategic, be brave, stand out, get ahead of the curve. And then on top of that, we've got your 10 starter ideas that we talked about. Leah asked a question. All right, Leah, thanks. Let's see. Oh, it disappeared. You guys see those? You guys should see the summary right now popping up. It's a little delayed. And then here's 10 starter ideas. Be single-minded, create that red thread, give it a why, look tangentially, get ahead of the curve, reject the traditional. That's just a great way to do it. When somebody says, yeah, we're going to do the same, we'll do the opening video and then the PowerPoint deck, and say, well, what if we didn't do an opening video? What if we ended with an opening video? Okay, so here's a question. What do you think is the best way to be persuasive when the future is so ambiguous? Oh, boy. You've got to be seen as the initiator, as somebody who is an expert in the area. You've all been in this business, I'm sure, for a long time. And so you need to be okay with saying you're an expert and saying there is another way that we can do this, that we can meet. Carve the path forward for yourself, as opposed to waiting for the organization to decide, are we going to do this conference this year or not? Help them make the decision. Give them options, at least bringing options to the table to say, here are the options. We're doing this conference. We're going to either do it this way, or here's a way we can do both ways. So, and it doesn't even have to mean you have the answers to be persuasive. It just means you have to ask the question. Some of the most strategic people in the world don't actually have all the right answers, right? They just have the right questions. And if you're at the table asking really smart questions, that's gonna push you into that realm of being strategic. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful for everybody. We're happy to share the deck and enjoy the rest of the conference. And that's it. That's all we have. Leah, do you want to? Do you have anything to close up with? I don't think so. All right. Well, I think you all know how to get to your next session. You got to go back out to the lobby, I believe, and then you'll be able to get to your next chosen session. Oh, there's Leah. Oh, there's another question. How are you using content to keep the audience engaged for virtual events? Oh, we got a minute here. We can answer that. Virtual, the best way to engage virtual is keep the content moving, right? Don't have your sessions too long. I will say that some of the best content is done with multiple presenters. Right. If I had my druthers, a better presentation might have been a conversation with somebody. So I would look to taking those keynotes that are single presenters and actually have two people doing it. And that's going to instantly turn that content into something that's a little bit more engaging. So yeah, look at your content that you would have for your normal in-person, try to shorten it or try to break it up. So maybe somebody coming out giving 30 minutes, maybe they give 15 minutes and then the other 15 minutes is an interview, or the other 15 minutes is more of a dialogue Q&A. But definitely break it up with additional presenters, slightly shorter segments. I think the polls are good. I mean, I did a bunch of polls here, although I couldn't figure out how to how to show them to you guys. They weren't coming up for some reason. But for me, I think that's going to be the best. That's going to be the best way, instead of the standard click forward with PowerPoint. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.
So why you rhythm on our side, we cannot be stopped. And as planetary citizens, listen, we are not ZYX or the next generation. We are the continuum, searching. Cannot be stopped. And as planetary citizens, listen. Planetary citizens, listen, we are not. We are not ZYX or the next generation. We are the continuum, searching with urgent patience. More than millennials, we are perennial emeralds. Glistening, listening to ethical generals. Embracing notes from Grace Lee's scroll. As these days unfold, we make broken streets whole. Resilience meets brilliance, the key is children. Tomorrow is promised, cause we intend to build it. We a community of beauty and passion. Endeavor to fashion what the elders